All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Hazmat Guys Nation Roundtable. This is a multimedia platform to bring hazmat responders information and training tips from hazmat members from around the globe. I'm Bobby Salas. I'll be acting as the host for the show for tonight, and I am joined by my illustrious and benevolent co-hosts, Bobby Cosch and Phil Ambrose, both of the HazSim type thing. You know what's funny? Over Phil's back, I can see out the window that he's looking towards.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day.
Awesome.
It's still sunny here. Is it sunny where you are?
No, it's dark.
It's sunny.
Yeah.
It's like morning already. It's so late.
Yeah, it's bright sunny sky. Be at the beach right now.
Unbelievable. Mike is not available to jump on the phone with us tonight, but we might have a special guest later on, and we'll see how that goes. But for right now, we are going to be talking about what, like white powder, right, Bob?
Yep. Yeah, white powder calls. You know how different people respond to them, and you know what's happened since 2001.
We've come a long way. Let's quick intros.
Yeah, sure.
You kind of did it, but Phil Ambrose from Hazmat Nation HazSim, and we're going to talk about it later. But FDIC next week, big deal. And Jason Rogers, who you're on the side there, Wednesday night live show at FDIC. We're going to talk about it at the end. So if you can hang in there, keep that 8-month-old happy, and we'll talk more about it. We might have a special guest, but just want to throw in those plugs, and don't forget the Hazmat Guys podcast and the fact that Bobby and Mike will be teaching a class out at Baltimore, so there's still time. And if you are already planning on going to FDIC, which you should have your ticket, you should be ready to go. If you need a place to stay, you can sleep on our floor. Plan on that.
We'll just charge a little bit.
We're going to talk more about it, but I'm the plug guy. I'm going to throw these things out there. And then, yes, talking about white powder leather, which, of course, white powder reminds me of vinyl, if anybody's been watching that series on HBO. But, okay, go ahead, host.
All right, so Bobby.
Yeah, I'm Bob Costagnano, Hazmat Lieutenant, City of Orlando Fire Department, and trainer for HazSim.
And I'm Bobby Salison. I'm from the FDNY, and I am one of the Hazmat guys. We have the podcast on doing hazardous materials. So, without any further ado, I think Bob did the bulk of the research on this thing. So why don't you start it off, and we'll just kind of pepper in on you.
All right. Pepper in. I like that. So 2001, you know, the white powder calls have been around for a while. You know, in Florida, we saw white powder, but usually the cops took care of that because it was the kind that came from, I don't know, maybe like Bolivia or something like that. So when we started dealing with different types of white powder calls, you know, 2001 was a bad year, obviously. And in October, we hit the anthrax calls. I don't know about you guys. We were running after the first incident down in Boca here in Florida. We started running powder calls like it was crazy. We were doing 30 plus a day. And it was to the point where we actually put 2 extra hazmat units in service. Now, I say hazmat units. There's a couple guys in a van or a couple guys on our unstaffed hazmat truck at the time. You know, whatever we could to make it work. You know, some of the things we were doing back then, you think back and you're like, oh my God, did we really do that? We were running a HazCat kit on the tailboard of our beer truck hazmat vehicle. You know, so and there were lots of other stories that we can talk about here in a little bit. So it was virtually an unknown. How do we do that? We weren't prepared. I don't care what anybody says. You know, people went to classes and this and that. There was a small group of people around the country that actually had a little forethought in this. We had a good idea because of some of the people that we worked with that were on some national committees and whatnot, but we were still way behind the 8 ball. How about you guys?
Well, going back, I was on the hazmat team for a major university that also had a hospital. And I want to say it was late 90s. I don't think we'd hit, remember we were all supposed to go analog again when 2000 hit, if anybody remembers that. And I want to say it was 98 or 99 where there was an anthrax incident. And we're talking it had been hours. And then there was people that came either by car, by bike, by skateboard to the hospital that were then cordoned off in an area to be deconned. And I specifically remember having a guy wearing his, Pierre Cardin suit, his businessman briefcase, and making him strip and soaking him down. And this is somebody that just happened to be walking a block away from the incident. And man, we've come a long way since then. And I think plus law enforcement has changed tremendously. And I could speak a little bit to that with the teams around here, how they can't speak directly for them, but what we've seen and how we work. And really it was with that federal nexus now making it illegal just to send powder, because if you remember, it wasn't necessarily illegal. You send a powder, there had to be some sort of threat. Now the laws have changed. But of course, we also had that. And then around Christmas time, we've got areas of the city with Orthodox religions that might send, like a little host from church in an envelope, and everybody was it. We had throughout the region, much like you guys, we had tons of those calls.
Yeah, we actually in New York City when it first came over, we had. I'm sure the same amount as you guys. I mean, it was just insane. We were so on our heels right afterwards. I came over in special operations Christmas of '01. And actually like the 26th, and I remember they were putting us out on with charcoal suits, like the mop gear that we got from military, and they would just put us out in trucks, 2 firemen, a boss and a fireman, whatever it might be, and then in like '03, DHS started getting in bed with what the hell is it, AOAC. They were some
Yep.
they were like a third party screener. They were like a scientific organization, and they started to look at the metering because we were using meters that were like they wouldn't pick up anything until it was like 10 or 20 times over the threshold for an exposure.
Right.
I kind of, and then, so it was a really weird thing. And then I remember there was a whole thing about smallpox. Remember that right after, like 2002, 3, and they started inoculating guys with smallpox, and they would scrape your arm, and they would give you the smallpox, and you would be out of work for months, like 2 or 3 months to recover. There was scab, and it would pus up, and luckily I never got that one. I kind of stayed away from the smallpox one because I said, oh, I'm new and I don't really know much about this, but that and the funny thing is in New York City we still get a lot of those runs. However, the fire department is really not involved in it. So as far as, and I see Mike Lazar is in the watching this right now. He works with me too, but for the most part, we go on these white powder runs. When we see it come across the ticket, we basically roll our eyes because we know nothing is going to happen. Because first off, it's a police matter only. Very, very, very rarely do they bring us in. These are the guys that actually bring us in are the same chiefs and officers say, oh, have Hazmat bring in their asbestos meter or, their microwave meter or something like, there is no, come on. But I mean, listen, I know there's meters for this, but we don't carry it. And that's just like chief officers and above not really knowing what we have and us maybe not telling them what we have. But as far as these white powder runs in New York City, I truly don't have a lot of experience. They don't want us touching them. They don't want us sampling them. That was tried out in the beginning, and then it was kibosh because we screwed it up all the time. Fresh.
Yeah.
Really.
I think it's interesting because somebody out there, I'm sure they're going to do a master's thesis on kind of the history of Hazmat and how it changed. And maybe somebody has. If you have, I haven't read it. If I read, my lips get tired. The transition from your DOT-based hazmat, your rollover, your railroad incident, and we'd always thought about, say, that terrorist nexus, but then all of a sudden the shift and FEMA, DHS, the money, and how things went. I think that was interesting. I know here, at least in Southern California, I won't speak directly for them, but there was police agencies that had environmental cops, and they were looking for the abandoned drums in the alleys, the pouring paint down the drain. And it was a combination, the universal waste infractions, and I think it was a combination of cities got better of making it easier to dispose of stuff, and boom, 9/11 and anthrax and all that happened, and there was teams that I think were on the chopping block based on budgets because the environmental crimes were dropping, and now I know a lot of those same that are now say that not the anthrax cops, but the ones that handle the hazmat cops were those same individuals, and the programs are now huge, and it makes sense also to send, what do we always say, send the appropriate resource to the call. And I know there was a time, and there might still be communities across the U.S. that are sending full hazmat assignments to a white powder letter. And I understand that the statement of, hey, you never know, you got to be careful. But I know here in the Southern California region, at least in the big city, it's common. It'll be maybe a single hazmat specialist cop response with some backup. Of course, if they do get some sort of credible threat, it's going to get kicked up. And I would say the other thing I would offer for somebody to add in their little master's thesis is how much more fire department then started to play with all these other acronyms, because I saw it myself, the uptick. Had fire guys ever really sat in a meeting with, from CHP to Secret Service to FBI and all that, on a routine basis? And now we have regular meetings, at least in the LA area, that include all those players, all because of the anthrax type responses.
Well, that brings up a good point, because we had, in the beginning, like I said, we were doing 30 plus a day, and it was insane. And we really had nothing more than our HazCat kit to go off of and test a white powder. And again, trying to do something in the tailboard with the wind blowing and everything. And, we've come a long way. Now you've got, people have these little, they call them quarantine boxes or whatever, that they try to put the powder in and whatnot. But at any rate, I remember one time where they were talking about the white powder on a car, and there was I'm not going to mention the fire department, but they cut the door off like it was a pen job, because there was white powder on the door, and they tried to ship that whole thing to the LNR, the lab that's supposed to test it. And they get this door, and they're like, what the hell are we supposed to do with that? No, it wasn't Orlando, Jay. But it just goes to show that now, and we would send a whole first alarm. I mean, we got 2-3 engines, a couple truck companies, and everybody else going. And now we've scaled it way back. And a lot of this has to do with education through these different classes. Whether do they still do Dugway? Because I think that closed down, didn't it?
I won't stop.
Yeah, that was a great class.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I thought somebody just recently went to it. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe they might have started.
That was the biosampling. That was
that?
Biosampling, right?
Biosampling, yeah.
See, I thought it was still up. I couldn't remember somebody who just went to it recently.
Yeah, so that's a great class, and like we've mentioned on a lot of these other shows, the Anistons, the Dugways, the Nevadas, these are classes that are free. People should go and get their learn on. But one of the things that we learned was how much we don't know. And like you talked about, Bob, you guys have, was it ESU does that stuff, police?
Yeah, that's the emergency circuses.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oops. Yeah, and we had our police department started a hazmat team as well, which we ended up training. And not that there's anything wrong with the cops doing certain things, but the problem that we had was we're there in 4 or 5 minutes, and they're trying to put their team together for an hour or two. We're done, and we tell them what it was or wasn't. What's happened that I think has really worked out is that people started. I would say it probably took almost 2003 to really get their act together and start getting some plans. One of the big things is when the FBI came out with their 12-step process. Hey, this is a guideline. If you're going to start doing sampling, and it's a basic field testing, how do you do it so you don't mess up their evidence? You're not messing up their crime scene. And, is it really a threat? For years, people were talking to us about, well, it's got to be a credible threat. Well, does it really have to be? That poor old lady in New England area where her mail happened to cross with some of the mail from that New Jersey facility, she ended up getting anthrax. There was no credible threat. It's a little old lady. So, there's things like that I think people have learned over the years. But with that 12-step process from FBI, the LSU sampling classes, the Dugways, whatever, we've come a long way in the technology. I mean, we've got basic rudimentary stuff, 2020 kits, RAID 8s, handheld assays, the ramp. There's a lot of these things that have come a long way to help us, take care of some of these things in a quick manner. Because I don't know, I'm sure in New York, you guys don't want stuff closed down for hours. I know we don't. LA, Phil, you guys don't want things closed down for hours. We need to find something quick,
Yeah, it's interesting because, that's why here in California, we have less hazmat because we're a NIMBY state, and we have lots of businesses that have their own in-house team, all based on business recovery. Because you shut down and then you lose money, and the economy gets hurt. Back to the sampling and stuff, though. Yeah, especially with the evidence collection, I remember a period of time there, and of course. You go out, where Jason is, and middle of the country, I think you find more, say, joint teams where you may have cops and firefighters on the same hazmat team, in his case, EMS. I remember a time where we would go and do that joint entry, but then it turned into that chain of custody when they're, we can go through all the classes, but we've been really fortunate. I mean, the men and women for the big department that wears the park ranger uniforms, they have a chemist on staff that responds. They have a microbiologist, and they have a mobile lab now, and they're very good. And then the city folk, their team is incredible. LAPD has one of the best microscopes, you can buy, and they have the ability to then zap pictures from the scene to the what's the big lab there in Atlanta? The CDC. So it'd come a long way, but yeah, just shutting down an entire block of a city for a one white powder letter in a mailroom, or worse, some white powder in the coffee room. But yeah, we all have them. We have those, say, Target Ridge type. We one of our districts has lots of the major studios, which of course, look at what happened with the breach of data at Sony. I mean, they're targets in every which way. So you need to be ready. It's hard. It's one of those things. I think some people might say, "Hey, you can never be too safe. Let's shut down a city block." But then you say, "Well, let's get real here." I know most of the cop responses when they end up going in, it's probably a PAPR and some gloves, level C-ish, and do their sample, do their thing, and the goal is to quickly identify.
Well, what's funny is, well, it's not funny. It's actually kind of sad. Is in our own community, our own hazmat tech community, I've actually seen news clips where guys are going in level A for a powder call. And without getting into that whole discussion, we got to wear the right suit for the right thing. Phil, you mentioned level C. Absolutely, there's nothing wrong with that. If somebody's standing in a post office and they're talking and everything else is going, you don't need to go in a level B with an air pack. You know what I mean? Level C is probably okay. But something else, and I'm kind of breaching ahead here, whatever you're going to be testing your stuff with, make sure it's in compliance. Make sure it's in date. Make sure it is tested. Make sure it is authorized by those that are going to come get your samples. If you test something with, let's say, an expired 2020 kit or expired handheld assay or whatever, you've just ruined their evidence. You've ruined everything that if they do catch the bad guy, he's going to walk. And I'm not a lawyer, but that just makes common sense. Some of the key issues that are out there is, does your local hazmat team have the response capabilities? If you haven't been trained in it, you don't have what it takes, call somebody. But you know what? To figure out when to call is not 3 a.m. It's to have that plan ahead of time, who you're going to call, when you're going to call.
Even locally, sorry, that even recently, I remember, and I remember in the beginning where it was right after the 11th, we were having a lot of issues with, and as silly as it sounds, mailbox fires. Do you guys remember this? Where it was mailbox fires, and so what the company would do, because it was so easy, they would take the dry chem, go up to the mailbox, and put the mailbox out. And now what do you have? You have 1,000 envelopes with white powder on them. And the post office freaked out because they had to literally launder all this this mail. So I remember, and it's always been the way to do it. You stick a CO2 extinguisher in there and you extinguish it that way. But even recently, and I don't remember where it was. It was somewhere local in the Northeast. But there was a whole thing where there was a rash of, I guess, a budding arsonist who was lighting mailboxes on fire, and the fire departments were putting them out with dry chems, and the post office had to say, please stop doing that. Use carbon dioxide. Yeah. So it was, but that's the kind of stuff that we're seeing out there is like not us being idiots or not thinking it through. I'll say that it's these well-intentioned hypochondriacs that are on the streets.
Hypochondriac's a good term.
People that pay our salaries, kind of thing.
You mean
laundry soap
the
samples.
cell phone caller by those who call and drive on their way with a smug sense of purpose and then update their status that they just saved a life?
But even like Jason Kerr is saying, like he's saying that laundry soap samples they get mailed out in those little plastic packets. They get torn, and it's everywhere. I mean, it's a good smelling anthrax, but it's an anthrax nonetheless.
We actually had a guy in a government facility that said, "Oh, that's not anthrax," and he reached down and he touched the floor. Now this is carpet, but brown. It ended up basically being brown sugar, and went, "Nah, it's not anthrax." And I had to look at him. I'm like, first off, where did you get that? Wait, let's just back up. You touched a dirty floor and put it to your tongue.
And then licked it.
You, sir, are an idiot. And it just happened to be 2 feet from where the coffee mate and natural sugar and everything else was. I mean, come on. We still get called to a lot of stupid stuff, But yeah, like Jason mentioned, the laundry soap. One of the aspirin type companies was shipping stuff out years ago, so we got all kinds of crushed up pills or whatever, Nowadays, you'd probably think it was oxycodone or something, but, they were doing that. So
I think the ones that get tricky and the ones I remember, the Christmas time it was one of the Orthodox religions and they were sending little wafers. And those, when it shows up from something Astan and it's got, lots of interesting writing and it's got over postage, it gets everybody's attention up. And of course, the cops are doing their thing and investigating. I remember doing one when I was back with another acronym and we rolled out with the FBI team. And anybody that's got any researchers or colleges in their district or anywhere nearby, I mean, we went and this one was allegedly Ebola, but there's researchers out there that they're just doing their job, they're doing their thing, but they're sharing, samples back and forth, and we responded to it was very, very strange from the get-go, and it was one of those they couldn't get a hold of the person to talk to about it. And all the testing we could do came back, but you get those weird ones mixed in with the Cremora by the Jiffy Lube free coffee, and you're thinking like, yeah, I don't think anybody really, unless they're upset about the bad free coffee.
Yeah, exactly. But one of the things too that we need to keep in mind is that, if you are trained in this stuff, doing training once every 6 months, once a year is not going to cut it. You got to stay proficient in the stuff. So we've got, let's talk a little bit 2001. So as I mentioned before, people were cutting parts of a car or taking mailboxes and wrapping them up in, visqueen and sending them into an LNR or whatever. So we've progressed a little bit forward. And I say a little bit because we still got a long way to go where we're actually doing some basic sampling techniques and strategies where most people that have a hazmat team have some type of protocol or a flow chart. We're going to do this test first. And we mentioned this earlier before the show this afternoon. We're not going to go into, if anybody's listening in to hear how we do things, we're not going to go into exactly what we do because obviously we're tipping our hand to the bad guy. But there are some things that we can do. Have a protocol. Get a protocol set up. If you don't have one, as I mentioned, the FBI 12-step process is a good start. Talk to your neighboring fire departments. Talk to your law enforcement. Get everybody on the same page now. And I always say 3 a.m. because I don't wake up good anyway, especially at 3 a.m. So I'd rather have that.
I mean, this is not This is not natural.
This is not natural.
I'm just
as perfect as the hair is. I have to wear a hat in the middle of the night.
Did they have to call it a 12-step though? That's just bothering me.
Well, yeah. Well, as you
They could have picked something else. Another thing I got to throw out there it really worked, and I was going to try to get them on here. We've got one of the hazmat cops from LAPD that started something called the Consortium of Technical Responders, and it was there's been now. I'm not sure if you got any back east now. I know that it's kind of grown throughout California, but it's a group, meets up monthly usually. But we took all the acronyms, and our meetings will have from the PD to the sheriff to the FBI. Then you got the other side of the thing, the non-emergency response responders that are so important, the public health, the rad health, the medical directors, and all those types that don't necessarily suit up or sit in the seat on the BRT. But I tell you, it's so nice if you can stomach going to meetings, and these we try to keep fun, but you end up face-to-facing with them on these regular basis, and then when the response comes in, it's not that classic, who's this person that's in charge of public health, and why are they telling us what to do? And at all levels, it's worked out great. And if you don't have a CTR in your area, think about doing it. I mean, it's a good deal.
Yeah, and there's if you have an LEPC in your area, they're good for getting some of these free training classes, and just meeting with your local fire departments or your Department of Homeland, whatever. We've actually, in Florida, we've had some health department types that have come out and said, we've been doing it wrong for all these years. I'm sorry, it's 2016 and you're just now coming to tell us how to do it. I've got a little bit of an issue with that. So again, it goes back to training. And if you've got equipment, practice with it, train with it. Don't just pull it out and try to remember how, I don't know if any of you guys have a PCR. We got a PCR. I could probably tell you 3 guys of our 520-man department that might remember how to run a PCR. And there's some things that it's a great technology. It's a great tool. But how far do we really want to go? Are we just kind of doing some basic analytical testing on scene? I don't need to find the DNA of it. That's not my job. My job is it's either this, maybe, or cocaine or whatever else that we might throw on the Has ID, or a cop, gives us a NIC kit or something like that. So, the big thing is getting your sample. Like Jason just said, make sure you get the sample. This isn't a sampling class either, but if you're going to get a sample, get it from the edge. Don't do it right in the middle, because that ruins everything for everybody else. And that's my little plug for trying to do sampling properly.
And,
go ahead, Bill. Go ahead,
I was gonna say we did a drill once where it was kind of cradle to grave with the sampling, with all the teams, with all the acronyms, up to and including taking a sample, which we had a microbiologist come up with. It obviously wasn't live age. It was live agent, but some sort of benign, and I can't think of the name of it. But it wouldn't even give you cooties. But up to and including even getting it on a helicopter, and of course there's all the now at least between LAPD, LA County Sheriff, they have really good capabilities on scene, which I'm sure a lot of the major cities do. But they still went through the entire exercise of getting this sample to the lab, and it's like anything else. If you don't practice doing it, if you don't practice that hose pull, it's not going to just happen. So it was a good drill. And like I said, I can't say enough about getting together with the acronyms, because not all of them are emergency responders. And I think where we came a long way, and it's kind of like what's happening now with active shooter. If you notice now, cops are getting a little more involved on the EMS side because of the active shooter and the stop and bleeding, and there's this growing pains now because the cops want to run in on a chest pain call to practice their, and we saw that with hazmat. The cops wanted to get the hazmat suits, and now it's kind of settled out. At least the hazmat cops we get to work with are all really good, and I don't know. It seems like the growing pains have happened, and we're working a lot better, and we're getting the job done. But it does always make me scratch my head. Although I'll post it up, and it looks good if there's a white powder response and they're going in level A. But on the other hand, I look at it, I go, well, maybe they wanted a good training day, I guess. But and I don't know. You never know the full story.
That's like what I was going to go into is like basically. If you are put in this position to go to one of these white powder runs, I've had discussions with guys. Well, we can wear our firefighting turnout gear, and we can wear a Tyvek F, basically our painter's overall cover thing. And guys are like, well, the firefighting gear is just as good. But my thing is it's if it's going to get that crap in it, that means my gear's out of service. And that's like kind of the nuts and bolts of being in the companies that we're in. So I'd rather just put on the disposable outer covering and shuck that. I don't even care how much it is because I'm not paying for it. It doesn't come out of my paycheck. The air is free. I can breathe as many cylinders as I want. So if they're giving you the ability to put on rubber booties and Tyvek covering and a little bit of duct tape and your APR, or even better yet, your SCBA, because I come out of the cell, I never have to want for air. They just swap in a new cylinder and I can go right back to work. So does anybody like not put on just basically dust protection? I mean, with these types of, they're powders.
Right.
They don't have vapor pressures. They're not coming out to get us. We're going in to get it.
Right.
Does anybody disagree with that?
We just do level C.
That's what we do.
Yeah. And the other thing too is if you're going to go into bunker gear, what's on your bunker gear? Because as much as we're supposed to clean our gear
on or in,
on or in, we're definitely messing up other things. So, and like you said, Bobby, I don't want to take my gear out of service. If something pops up and they say, "Oh yeah, this is contaminated," now my frontline gear's out of service. Now what do I do?
Right.
So we go.
And some departments don't have two sets.
Yeah. Yep.
So, I come from a department that, we have a couple more guys than 500, but, we all have two sets of gear. So, that you put a whole company out of service maybe to do that.
Right. And one of the things we did too, especially when we were running a lot, and we still do it to this day, and this is just a little trick of the trade, and a lot of people probably do it, is we have a tote that's already made up for level C, and each tote can dress out two guys. So when the hazmat truck pulls up, there's two totes, depending on the size of the suit you need. The guy just pulls out the level C tote, throws it out, and two guys get dressed out. And we can be in there in less than 5 minutes, doing some real quick sampling to figure out what we got, or more importantly, what we don't have. Because let's face facts, how hard is it to make anthrax? Don't post anything how to make it, people, please. Especially certain ones. But really, I mean, there's other things, in my opinion, that are more dangerous that we need to worry about. And
we mentioned it in other blabs, but I always like to point it out. I guess it's when I got the PIO training. Tech ref. We always look at tech ref for picking your PPE, assisting with what you'd say metering or sampling. And in this case, it's a little unique. Actually, most of our meters we have, or equipment we have now, is built to go in on scene. I mean, so much of it. Remember, we went from you got to bring the sample out to you could bring it in, but there was an extra, I forget which one, had the computer and all that garbage, and now we can just bring in a lot of the equipment. But the tech ref to always consider, and when you do it, and we don't have it officially on our form, is what are you going to tell the entry team? What are you going to tell the hazmat group? But then what are you going to tell kind of the PIO? Just because that's the stuff, we live in an age now, and you see the police pursuits we get in Southern California, where when we're talking about all this stuff, like even 99, 2000, with all the anthrax stuff, there was helicopters overhead. But I mean, now if you go back in time and add Twitter to all that and all the photographs of everything we did. So I can't say enough for a lot of easy ups. And just always remember, when you're doing your tech ref, think of how you can also position it to be able to help out your IC and your PIO.
Yeah, Jason's got a good question, and this brings up for everybody else, how do you dispatch to a powder call? Back in the day, we were sending 2 engines, a truck, a rescue, and everybody, a whole basically first alarm to a powder call. Now what they do is they send the first 2 engine company just to gather information. In each engine company, there's a book that we made up of questions to ask when they get on scene. Basically an officer's guide on how to approach people. Don't go in, maybe talk to them through PA, whatever the case may be. And then if that officer arrives on scene and says, hey, I'm at a mail facility, or I'm at a government building, or something that doesn't even have a powder, just has a threatening letter, that's one of the things to be on the lookout for, because it might just be a threat in a letter, and you may not have visible powder or visible liquid, but you still need to check these things and approach them cautiously. So if we did have that first officer arrive on scene and think he needed to call for more help, he would call, for us, it'd be the hazmat engine and hazmat truck and maybe one of our hazmat truck companies.
I see another question here, Sea Burning, and I think based on the Twitter handle, you may know the answer to its own question. But I know it's regionally, but without giving away any secrets, with the acronyms, it depends on what part of, say, Southern California you're in. Some, it may get directly dispatched straight as a kind of a PD run. Others may start out as a hazmat, but I know at least here, and I'm sure in your big cities, guys, they're linked better than ever in meeting all the acronyms. And I think the other thing is the cops, whether it be for auto theft or drugs, they've always worked real well as, say, task forces. It was very common for a local cop to be on an FBI team and all that stuff. And I think that's what I've seen in the last 15 years with hazmat, is more of that interjurisdictional mix of, I know we have hazmat members, even firefighters, on some of those teams that are part of the the decision process with I won't give away all the acronyms, but you know what I'm talking about as far as who decides and how it gets kicked up the chain. And I know at least here there's familiar faces all involved in that, so we usually feel really good about it.
Jason brought up a thing. Do we as far as the where I work in New York, where do we put it over the radio, or is it a ring down, which I'm assuming is like do they directly phone call us? We put it out over the radio. I mean, it goes out over the radio as a white powder run. Even when we had Ebola all over the place, they were saying that was the way they termed it on the radio is fever travel. That's what they said. So, engine XYZ, you're going to a fever travel, and they would know, okay, it's an Ebola run. But we just say white powder run. That's we send them to a suspicious powder or a suspicious envelope. Usually is how it comes in. And what that does for us, I don't agree with it, but what they should do is they come up with some other term, and then when the guys get in the truck, if you have the MCTs, the mobile command terminals, where you can read stuff, then you have information. Everybody's not hearing it. But what our guys do is it comes in as suspicious powder, suspicious envelope, as I mentioned before the first due officer gets there. And we've tried to educate them and say, hey, before, don't go over the radio calling for the world. Pick up your Nextel. Believe it or not, yes, we still have Nextels. Yeah.
Ooh. I found this in the garage the other day, or the kids found it. The old.
Use it.
What is that? Was that the coolest thing ever back in the day? Still has old dispatches.
Orlando's keeping Nextel in business, I guess.
That's awesome. But we try to get the officers to call the hazmat officer on the phone and get them to respond. But you know what? It doesn't always work. There's no perfect system, unfortunately.
We've got some of the bigger cities have fire personnel somehow, at least, I guess for lack of a better word, embedded, and then some teams and it's not exactly policy, but I know that the cops prefer it, because if we are going to call them, let's say it comes in as something that's totally more, say, hazmat, and it is a law enforcement issue, we contact them through PD. That's kind of the order of business. But we have a good enough relationship with some of their leads that I'll text them or I'll call them, because especially the cops, they let what they call OPSEC, loose lip sync ships, and too much stuff. And the same thing with what I mentioned with Twitter. Now anything you say on the radio isn't just somebody with a scanner within the repeater distance. Now it's all over the world, and you've just announced it. So I think we're doing better at that. But take one police pursuit driving there, and they won't pay attention to us anymore.
Wow. Well, I mean, even there is no metering.
No.
We don't have any first line metering. Everything is totally secondary metering. It's all identification on scene, and even with that, it's very limited. I mean, almost nobody has the capabilities of doing it on site.
Right. And
we don't.
What our LNRs are telling us, where we take it to the lab, is they want to make sure we clear it for radiation. They want to make sure we clear it for explosive, and they want to make sure we clear it for LEL because of how they have to test it. Some of that we can do there for the most part, but now you're involving a bomb team. You're involving, we're fortunate. Our fire department also has a bomb team. There's not that many of those across the country, but we can do some of those things. But basically, it comes down to, again, having a procedure, starting off with number one, and working your way through the algorithm, or whatever it is your protocols are, to get to a certain point where, okay, now I'm going to push the red button. I'm going to call FBI, your local resource, or your intel person with your police, or whomever it's going to be, and get everybody there and kind of go from there. We had a call years ago where it was a fire. When the smoke and everything cleared, they found a bunch of jars of white powder. First, they thought it was a meth lab. It wasn't a meth lab. And, you do 10 or 15 different, depending on your department, you could do 3 or 4 or up to 10 different tests on one powder. We had like 10 different powders. The call ended up lasting a day and a half, and the guy would come out was making ricin, So
we got that all the time. Microbiologists used to use that all the time. Ship that as a class 6 poison.
So we went from a fire to ricin, and the whole call lasted like a day and a half, and everybody with initials in black SUVs showed up, and it was a long day and a half.
I think it depends on where you are, I guess, and we're spoiled. And I put it up on Hazmat Nation. I was hoping to get somebody from the team, and we'll add more stuff because I've actually got a lot of questions either through Hazmat Nation or LinkedIn. But LAPD now has their HMU. I have 7 of them, but they have a full-blown polarized light microscopy scope, and they can actually, it's like, I don't know how many, 3 to 5 micron range. They are actually able to, on scene, not only visually now, it's kind of like as a paramedic, you can say it looks like a heart attack, but you can't necessarily call it, you're not a doctor kind of thing. But they're not only able to identify it almost immediately, but zap a picture to the lab faster than the sample gets there. So we've been spoiled, and some of the other law enforcement teams are getting the same stuff. I don't know if ESU has that, if they don't. But and these are officers. I know one of them who's a friend of mine. He's at least last year, and it's probably changed. He'd been on 1,200 white powder calls, documented. Now were any of them real? We'll talk to him when we get him on the show. But that's more than probably the 3 of us combined, including everybody down the side. That's a lot of white powder letter calls.
One of the things too is when I don't know how people send their teams in, and I don't want to get into too specific for this, but when we send people in, a lot of people forget to have a rescue standing by. So let's talk about a response real quick. So if we're showing up, I'm going to send a hazmat team, but do we have a rescue or ambulance standing by? Not just for a powder call, but for regular hazmat calls. We've had a couple of hazmat calls lately. It's like, hey, what if one of these guys goes down? Then what are you going to do? So make sure you have that, that paramedic unit or whatever you have on scene. The hazmat rescue, sort of, kind of, no. We have hazmat medics, but they're kind of spread out, and that's a whole nother story. But you want to make sure that you have your guys dressed out properly, hydrate them, give them the right tools, get your hazmat rescue truck or an ambulance or something standing by for their protection.
As far as Jason Rogers wrote in that are we using ramen for the idea of BW? What is it? What is BW?
BW? I'm not sure what he's talking about. BW. We use a hazmat ID.
Bio.
So many acronyms.
Yes. I'll be honest with you. Ramen tech. All right, so. I know I go into this all the time, but you got your IMS, which is extremely super Bullwinkle. Yes, he's a good guy. IMS super sensitive. Then you got that next part is the mass spectrometry, and then you go into like the Raman and the FTIR and that kind of thing, where it all kind of goes in order. With the Raman technology, there are multiple different wavelengths. One of them is for like geology, where they analyze the rocks. I want to say it's like 256 nanometers. The typical one is 785. And now the newer one that's just coming out is like 1060 nanometers. And that's, there's ones out there, and I'm just going to, one that I heard about is Raguchin, whatever the hell the name is, the Pirogeny, I think this is the name of it. And that's a 1061. The ones that we're using still are like the Ahura, that it work pretty good, and they do pick up biowarfare. It seems, based upon what I've read, the 1060 might be better at reading that biowarfare, but you got to check it out depending on which one you want to look at. But yeah, the Raman will pick it up, I believe, because it's not a very fluorescent thing.
And
basically inert.
There's a lot of guides out there too that you can use, and I'm going to throw it out there. Jeff Z's Field Operations Guide, he's got a section for CBRNE, talks about terrorism and bio, and some good information from that. But any of these references that you can use and look up and use is a good thing. One of the notes that we had, you might get this suspicious letter. We've had this a few times where a letter got sent to the corrections department or a judge, and it really is guys that are in county jail putting stuff, whatever, sending it out, so that now it's a federal crime. I guess federal prison is better than state prison. I don't know, but we've got a
cable.
Yeah, cable. They probably get served, whatever. So we've got a lot of interesting things where as gross as it is, there's a liquid coming from a package. Well, guess what? It's urine. Or, the guy threw up in it, sealed it up, and sent it. We've had a lot of weird things. So, when you're looking at some of this stuff, it may not be a biological, well, that's all kinds of hazards, but, it could be something totally different. So you may not have anything showing, but you need to practice the same way all the time and take the same procedures. When you take a shortcut, we've got certain protocols. We do step 1, step 2, step 3. One of those steps in the middle is using the Haz ID. Well, if I skip all these other steps to cheat and go to the quick fix, what's to say that Hazmat ID isn't wrong? Whatever your process is, if you don't have it, call us, email us, whatever. We'll be happy to share. I'll be happy to share what we have. Use it, don't use it, use pieces, parts, I don't care. But don't just do the shortcuts, because the shortcuts is where we get complacent. Somebody's going to get hurt.
I agree. And being still a fan of the HazCat kit, and at least looking for the proteins and all that, it's just at least good practice, at least in drill. If you got to rush to the fancy stuff, it's usually what we do, but we try to include everything in at least the drill. And like Jason says, keep it simple.
That's it. Keep it simple, stupid.
And
that's a KISS theory right there.
Poor planning. I only brought one beer upstairs.
You don't have it. Where's your wife?
They went out to dinner.
Where's your wife?
Yeah.
Oh. You just gotta go like this.
Those drinks were really stiff, it turns out, too. That was.
You got to pre-plan.
Horrible. I thought I had enough in a pint for now.
Awesome. Is our mystery guest?
I say let's give
I think we're getting close to time here.
Give him a try, and we'll start talking that up. We've got Jason here as well, and.
All right. Let's see. We're gonna try to bring in a special guest on his cell phone. I'm gonna see if I can do this.
So I'll talk it up while he tries that, because he might not be available, but we're hoping he is. And this is so we talked about cancer. We talked about a lot of stuff, but the Firefighter Cancer Support Network will be at FDIC once again, and the good folks at Penwell FDIC, Bobby Halton, has given them Tuesday night. And if you are in at FDIC, if you're in Indy for Tuesday night, you really can't miss this show. Bob and I were there last year, and it was hilarious.
Yeah.
There he is.
You know what? We're going to leave him a funny message.
Talking over.
What? We can't sleep. You know what? I didn't even think about that.
That's right. I talked over it.
Anyways, Travis Howes is, and he was on Charleston when they had that horrific incident, and with the Charleston 9, and he was actually, I'll tell it because he tells the story. He was on the body recovery team, and man, went through some gnarly PTSD. He was a firefighter, a fireman, and also a Marine, served the country. And as a Marine, he was also an MP, so he can say he was a fireman, a soldier, a Marine, hoorah, and a cop. And his comedy show is absolutely hilarious. And we're going to try to catch him tonight and see if he can call in. We'll try one more time before we sign off. But anybody that's going to be at FDIC, that's the first thing you need to do is don't be a loser. Show up Tuesday night to Travis's show. If you have no money because you spent it on everything else, let me know and I'll get you a ticket because you should be there. It was a blast. Next, and we'll try again maybe Bobby, just in case, because I know he was in a loud restaurant somewhere. We have something exciting to announce that we've been talking about for Wednesday at FDIC. And anybody want?
Yeah. Yeah. So next week's show, so everybody knows, and we'll put it out a bunch of times so everybody is up with it, will not be Tuesday night. I'm sorry. It's going to be Wednesday live from FDIC. We have Jason Rogers and Jason Kerr hooked us up. We're going to be doing our live show from a Firehouse Subs location on the north side of Indy. 9 o'clock was going to be the show time, right? 9 o'clock. And anybody who wants to come out there and join us. We're going to post stuff all over, social media, whether all our Facebook pages and Twitter and whatnot. But we're going to do a live show there. So we'd love to have you guys come out, as many as you want. And, we'll do it up.
Well, as much as we can.
Well, as much as we can.
Yeah.
And then there might be an after thing someplace, maybe.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We have to.
And it's something. It's the Jasons. It was Jason Kerr, who I've never even met, but I love the videos of your retirement. And I feel like I know you. And then Jason Rogers, who hooked this thing all up. And I think it'll be a fun time. If you're in Indianapolis and you are a hazmat person and you're not there, you're a loser. You should be there.
And even if you're not and you want to promote up to a hazmat, come on.
Yeah, no. Anyways, but Tuesday night's a big deal, and then Wednesday night we're going to be putting stuff out there. But what a great job Jason did, and all the rest of his team of the, did I say it right? The Delaware County, Muncie, Indiana hazmat team, Viper team. Did I get that right?
Awesome.
Good. Okay, awesome, great group, and I'm totally looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I said if you're in Indianapolis, if you're in Phoenix, Arizona, you're not a loser.
You're definitely not a loser, Jason.
Yeah, that's definitely.
All right,
I'm gonna try. I'll try him one more time.
One more time.
But you know what? I'll be honest with you. He's not even getting back to my text. I'm trying to send him text, and he's not even getting back.
He sent me a picture of his junk earlier, so he is paying
good.
attention.
You lucky dog.
We can just post that.
Did I say that out loud?
Maybe not.
But funny show. If you're there, and if you're not there, follow him on Facebook, Travis Howes. Let me spell it out because, he's one of us. Meaning, I'd never heard such a funny comedian just in general, but then somebody that I felt like had been looking over my shoulder all the calls I'd been on, just knew it, and has a remarkable story.
It's incredible. He was like, a Marine? He was a cop. Then he was a fireman in Charleston during all that.
Going through what he went through, and then don't show up late.
Yeah.
It's the best heckling I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. Don't show up late.
You will be called out for sure. I'm going to be flying in Monday. Phil's coming in Tuesday,
right before the comedy show.
Bobby and Mike, I think, are coming in Monday morning, right?
Me and Mike are coming in Wednesday morning, and we're leaving Saturday and Sunday. So we'll be in the hub, just wowing everybody. I don't know who.
Absolutely.
I don't know. But with our drinking prowess and whatnot.
And while we're there, guys, we'll be updating stuff on Twitter, Hazmat Guys Nation Facebook page, all our Facebook pages. We'll be updating what we're doing, where we're at, what's going on, and if you want to hook up with us, then yep. Yeah, I'm there, bro. On the 30th. Room's booked.
Nice.
I'll be there for your retirement party. Wouldn't miss it.
All right. Try one more time.
All
and our
right.
new MySpace page.
Oh, I didn't know that. We got a MySpace page?
It's coming back. It's our AOL account.
I just tried him, and I actually got a text from him. He is unavailable, so
Okay,
we'll wrap
we
it up.
tried. I told him we'd mention him, and hey, just the fact that he was going to try is pretty killer.
Oh, yeah.
He took the call. He was trying, but I warned him about this probably an hour ago. So he did.
Yeah, it
his
was
best,
short time.
So it's good stuff. But you can send him a text. Tell him I'm
I'll
going to show the picture of his junk.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'll put his cell phone on the comment section so they can call him. It's his birthday. You got to call him and say hi. All right. Well, that wraps up another episode of the Hazmat Guys Nation Roundtable. Please be sure to follow us on Facebook, on our Facebook pages, which is the Hazmat Nation. It's Hazmat Nation, not the Hazmat Nation, right?
The Facebook page, the Hazmat Guys Nation.
Hazmat Nation.
The Hazmat Guys.
Hazmat
right,
Nation.
Hazmat
I don't
Nation.
Hazmat.
The Hazmat Guy. Whatever. You'll find us. It's very easy.
Yeah.
So we'll just go around one more time. Bob, where can we find you?
We got that. We've got the Hazmat Nation website, Facebook page, Hazmat Guys Nation Roundtable, HazSim, and you can find me at HZMTLT, Twitter, or at Gmail. Give me a shout if you guys want to talk about white powder calls or protocols or whatever. Hook me up, and we'll take care of you.
Ooh,
Awesome.
Sounds exciting. Anybody wants to call me and discuss my next beer? Phil Ambrose, Hazmat Nation, and it's everybody down the side here. All the familiar names like the ones we mentioned. Both Jason's, Jeff Z. I saw the Mac and Trev. I saw Ray Bramble from he's there in India. Bernie, haven't met you, but would like to. Hopefully, you can make it to Indy. The guys from California, everybody, thank you. It's cool because we get everybody together here. Don't forget to listen to the Hazmat Guys podcast. For me, he's above my head, and it can change. It's like the Brady Bunch. But if you haven't listened to those, just do it. And what's funny is you do it at the station, and you start at least kind of subtly talking about, because you know how guys are, I'm not going to do that. I'm getting guys to listen to it, and you can listen and you can refresh, because I tell you, there's too much information to know, and it's just a great way to review it. Looking forward to Wednesday, and then anybody that's in FDIC, hook us up. We will be there. Hook us up.
Yeah,
Hook us up with a beer.
Buy us a beer.
Hook up with it. Yeah.
Buy us a beer.
Buy us beer.
That's
what we want. I'm not asking for charity, just beer.
I'm Bobby from the Hazmat Guys. We do a podcast. Mike is normally here, but he's not here tonight. But actually, it's kind of funny. We're doing a 6-part decon series, and we just released number 1, but we just 2 and 3 are coming out, which go over the decon methods, which we just started to do. We were discussing very briefly here, but we're going to take it from the hot zone to the hospital via. We got a couple of guys that are in HazTac ambulances that run that whole thing, and then I got a guy that is the OEM kind of guy for a major metropolitan hospital system, and he's going to take us from the ambulance pulling up to either the body bag goes out the door or the person goes home with a kiss and a wheelchair. So a lot of exciting things. We have a lot of shows coming up. WMD is going to be coming up, whole series of stuff. But if you guys have time, come on out and see it. So catch us every week live Tuesday, 9:15 Eastern Standard Time on this channel, blab.im. And we'll also be producing a podcast version on this that you can find on the iTunes under the Hazmat Guys Nation. And we'll be posting the video onto my website and I believe Hazmat Nation as well. We have a YouTube channel which you can find, which is thhmgnation@gmail.com. You find the channel and you will see all these shows forever. Ever, like Manny Moto. All right. That's about it. We're going to shut up the show, and then afterwards we stick on to talk to you guys and get you guys on the show. So thanks very much for